Welcome to this webinar. My name is Stephanie and today's topic is about reflecting on own perspectives. This unit describes the skills and knowledge required to work respectfully with people from diverse social and cultural groups and situations, including Aboriginal and or Torres Strait Islander people. This unit applies to all workers. The skills in this unit must be applied in accordance with Commonwealth and state territory legislation, Australian and New Zealand standards, and the industry codes of practice. The session objectives for today, we will be reflecting on your own perspectives, appreciating diversity and inclusiveness and their benefits, communicating with people from diverse backgrounds and situations, and promoting understanding across diverse groups. Culture is a learned set of values, behaviour, and knowledge. It forms when a person or group's beliefs, behaviours, habits, and ongoing traditions are passed on from one generation to the next. Cultural practices are normal, everyday behaviours among a group of people that identify with each other. You belong to the group of people you share the same cultural practices with. Individuals and groups of different cultures do not identify or perform the same behaviours. The cultural difference between any two groups might include thinking, talking, acting, access to resources, beliefs, faiths, practices, customs, way of life, art, sport, language, food and eating, geographical region, education, socio-economic status, laws, class, country of birth, family structure, sexuality, spoken languages, popular culture, mass culture, and media culture. And the study of culture and how it relates to human experiences, the following concepts are important to understand. Cultural sensitivity. It enables an individual to reflect on how their culture, worldwide, and actions impact on others. Cultural awareness. It is a person's understanding of the differences between oneself and people from other countries or backgrounds. Cultural safety. It means providing a safe environment to people where there is no assault, challenge, or denial of their cultural identity and needs. Cultural competence. It is the ability to understand, communicate, and effectively interact with people across cultures. Diversity means variety. In the workplace, having diverse people means having clients, co-workers, supervisors, or managers from different cultures, races, genders, economic statuses, religions, philosophies, age brackets, or political affiliations. So reflecting on your own perspectives, people have a natural tendency to feel a certain way about cultural groups. Understanding cultural diversity will help you understand and control these tendencies. Cultural diversity, as the name implies, is the presence of multiple cultural groups with varying traits within a society. It is defined by the differences between the traits of the cultures involved and is visible in a myriad of ways. The ultimate goal for any society is to bring out and utilise diverse traits of these groups. Society must encourage its people to develop cultural awareness, safety and competence to reach this ultimate goal. Whether the cultural experiences you created for others are positive or negative will depend on how your perspectives, biases, prejudices, and ideas about culture affect your interactions with others. So identifying and reflecting on your social and cultural perspectives. Social and cultural are related but have different meanings. Culture is an adjective that describes things related to your set values, behaviour, and knowledge, while social is an adjective relating to community and society. Your perspective is your view of the particular attitude you have towards something, while your bias is your predisposition to favour one thing over another, usually in a way that is considered unfair. Identifying and reflecting on your social and cultural perspectives and biases. So, perspectives and biases can be based on social or cultural factors. Social perspective is your view or the particular attitude you have towards a community, society, or group of people. Social bias is your predisposition to favour one community, society, group over another. Cultural perspectives is your view of the particular attitude you have towards a set of values, behaviour, and knowledge. Cultural bias is your predisposition to favour one set of values, behaviour, and knowledge over another. So your perspectives and biases may affect your actions and behaviours as you carry out your job responsibilities, such as communicating, either verbally or in writing, with people from diverse backgrounds, complying with the duty of care policies, collecting and providing various information, providing support and assistance, either with or without physical contact, contacting family and carers, respecting care for deceased people, respecting another person's property, and complying with food, medication, or allergy requirements. Reflecting and analysing your own experiences, thoughts, and behaviour help in building awareness. Awareness of your perspectives and biases provides the benefits such as you'll have more control over your actions and reactions in the workplace. You can anticipate difficulties that you may encounter in the workplace. You'll be able to effectively resolve problems that can arise due to differences in racial and cultural backgrounds. Awareness of your perspectives and biases provide benefits, such as knowing your tendencies will aid you in developing your skills in observing, actively listening, and dealing with situations that may arise unexpectedly. Seeking growth opportunities can address your weaknesses. You'll be able to demonstrate a more positive attitude towards all people. So knowing your own culture can provide great insights into why you feel a certain way or why you grew up thinking of others in a certain manner, and help identify what you need to do to correct some misconceptions or negative attitudes. Take note that culture is not always clearly defined. Having the same ethnic background or speaking the same language does not mean having the same cultural identity. So identifying cultural perspectives. Identifying your own cultural perspectives is the process of determining your view of the attitude you have towards a set of values, behaviour, and knowledge. Reflecting on your own cultural perspectives is a process of understanding your view of the attitude you have towards a set of values, behaviour, and knowledge by serious thought. Identifying cultural biases. Some tips for identifying your cultural biases: determine the values and ideas you uphold and disregard. Compare your beliefs with some other beliefs. It is possible you may ask others about and be aware of your emotions about things and attitudes that you are related to. Identify and reflecting on your own social perspectives. The focus of cultural perspectives and biases are the different sets of values, beliefs, and ideas, while social perspectives and biases focus on society or community. Identifying your own social perspectives is the process of determining your view of or the attitude you have towards a community, society, or group of people. Some tips for identifying social perspectives are: make a list of the things you know about yours and others' communities. Notice the kinds of people you want to be with, consider the groups where you belong, and examine which group people you prefer and avoid, including how you regard different societies or communities, including your own. Reflecting on social perspectives is the process of understanding your view of the attitude you have towards a community, society, or group of people by way of serious thought. To reflect on your social perspectives, you may ask yourself, who are the people that you spend most time with? Who makes up your social groups? For instance, families, circle of friends, and other social networks. Where do you spend the most of your time? Do you dedicate time to church activities, working with children, attending political rallies, working on your fitness, or communicating with members of an exclusive group? Do you feel obligated to spend time with these people? Are there legal or social expectations of how to spend your time? What kinds of buildings or infrastructures are there in your environment? Who do you consult with when you have problems? What are the places and who are the people that you can turn to whenever you need support or have questions? What experiences have shaped your ideas about social groups? What are my beliefs and ideas about my racial heritage? What makes people from my cultural group unique? What are my beliefs and ideas about people in the same social group as me? What do I believe about people from different social groups in my industry? So identifying social biases is the process of determining your predisposition to favour one community, society, group over another. Some tips for identifying social biases are determine which society or community you have high and low regard for. Compare your community with other communities. Be aware of your emotions about different communities. Try to put yourself in the position of others. You may see the difference between your and other perspectives. Compare how you and others react to these different communities. So reflecting on your social biases is the process of understanding your predisposition to favour one community, society, or group over another by way of serious thought. To reflect on your social biases, you may ask yourself, when I see a person of a different social or cultural group, is there a change in my mood or disposition? Am I more likely to be willing to provide better service to people of certain groups? What is your reaction to news about others' communities? What groups do you refer to when forming thoughts, ideas, or opinions? What positive and negative traits do I contribute towards certain social groups? What do I think of people outside my social or cultural group? How do my age, sex, gender, wealth, and racial background affect my daily experiences? What recent experience show my age, sex, gender, wealth, and race affecting my interactions with others? So your reflection should give you a clearer picture of your culture's attitudes, language, policies, and structures. Depending on your culture, there can be varying effects of impacts on another person. Differences in language may affect the communication of a person with you and other community members. Differences in culture may restrict a person when solving issues or addressing problems. The person may receive benefits from certain policies, but they may also be subjected to the discrimination of unfair treatment. The person may not receive the same benefits as others due to structural differences. How your culture affects persons around you will differ on a case-to-case basis. It depends on specific differences between your culture and the culture of others. So work with awareness of own limitations in self and social awareness. Social awareness entails understanding how persons' social traits may form their values, behaviour, beliefs, and basic assumptions. Limitations are your personal shortcomings or failures in understanding others' cultures. Limitations in self include your perspectives, biases, and tendencies when interacting with others. It can be easy to fall into a false sense of awareness. Social awareness involves exploring social issues and recognizing that everyone is shaped by their sex, gender, age, economic class, and race. To become an expert in social traits or to have all the answers in a small box is unnecessary and impractical. It is important to remember that individuals cannot be defined solely by their social norms or patterns. Some key considerations of social awareness are awareness of one's own social and cultural influences before learning about others is important for any successful endeavour. The processes involved in understanding the beliefs and the behaviour of people can vary considerably within each social group. Making assumptions or generalisations on the effects of social influences should be avoided. You must view and evaluate other people's behaviour and beliefs using the standards of their group. Understanding how people adopt new practices and retain old practices can vary within social groups. Not all people identify with religious backgrounds or cultures. To better understand your limitations, look back at your answers to the reflection questions discussed previously. Try to see if you can provide answers to these new questions. What do I already know or believe about social and cultural groups? When thinking about the lives of the people in different social and cultural groups, what do I not understand yet? Are there any customs or practices that I need to learn about? Are there any aspects of their daily lives that I have not yet observed or read about? What aspects of my life do people form outside my social and cultural find confusing, different, or peculiar? Can there be aspects in the lives of others that I find different and peculiar too? To work with an awareness of your limitations, remember to do the following. Admit and fully realize the extent of your knowledge of social and cultural groups and backgrounds. Never pretend to know something that you do not know. Coordinate with your workplace to address your limitations. Assistances made by companies to address limitations in cultural awareness must never be considered unfair and partial only to people of diverse backgrounds. Never think that any one cultural group should conform to another. Reflecting on your ability to work inclusively and understand others. As a worker, you are expected to comply with your organisation's procedures in your daily interaction with colleagues and clients from diverse backgrounds. To work inclusively means to work in a way that upholds and protects the rights and dignity of all persons. On the other hand, understanding others means accounting for difficulties or issues arising from differences in culture and responding to these difficulties and issues appropriately. Inclusion through cultural safety. Culturally safe practices include actions that recognise and respect the cultural identities of others. Working inclusively and understanding others are accomplished by always observing cultural safety. Alternatively, culturally unsafe practices diminish, demean, or disempower an individual's cultural identity and well-being. Culturally safe practices allow organisations to create culturally inclusive programs. In the workplace, working inclusively can involve reflecting on your own culture, attitudes, and beliefs about others, using clear, value-free, open, and respectful communication, developing relationships based on trust and respect, recognising and avoiding stereotypical barriers, being prepared to engage in a two-way dialogue where knowledge is shared, understanding the influence of culture shock, strongly implementing and following policies and procedures on discrimination. To provide culturally appropriate services, workers must ensure that the decisions made and services delivered build on the person's strengths and are tailored to each person's needs. Recognise the significance of extended families, kinship, and cultural ties during planning and service delivery. Respect and are sensitive to the person's cultural traditions, preserve or enhance their sense of identity and connections with their family and community. To fulfill these responsibilities, all workers must develop an understanding of kinships, community histories, and dynamics, build relationships with cultural groups based upon respectful communication and appropriate professional connections, identify key stakeholders within communities, and work in partnership with significant community members and service providers. Work collaboratively with local government and non-government agencies to provide planned, coordinated services. Culturally inclusive programs ensure that all people retain their right to express and develop their cultural identity, remains progressive and emphasises the growth of cultures while protecting the self-esteem and identity of all people, recognises the unique contributions of Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people, as well as people from other cultures to the society of Australia, provides positive representation for people in diverse cultures and backgrounds, focuses on contemporary issues while staying respectful of the history of Australians and the values within it, has clearly defined philosophy, policies, and procedures. They must be rooted in the various legal and ethical bases that apply to the organisation and industry. Inclusion in human rights. Human rights are based on the obligation to yourself and others as human beings to uphold liberty, dignity, equality, fairness, respect, and independence. On the other hand, human needs pertain to basic needs of survival, food, shelter, water, clothing, and the like. Human rights advocates for all people to have satisfactory access to their human rights. Human rights are inalienable because they cannot be taken away. The Universal Declaration of Human Rights is a timeless document that outlines the rights and freedoms everyone is entitled to. is a framework for workers across many service sectors and establishes fundamental human rights that must be uniformly safeguarded for all people. A guide in providing services to ensure that all people are given equal opportunities in life, liberty, education, health, and security. The following are the 7 core treaties recognised by the government: the International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights, International Covenant on Economic, Social and Cultural Rights, International Convention on the Elimination of All Forms of Racial Discrimination, Convention on the Elimination of All Forms of Discrimination against Women, Convention Against Torture and Other Cruel, Inhumane or Degrading Treatment or Punishment, Convention on the Rights of the Child, and Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities. Other international human rights treaties define the international human rights framework. These treaties function as international instruments that are observed and upheld in workplaces. Workers must be familiar with these international instruments. They ensure that the organisation has a fully inclusive workplace, accommodating all of these. So slides 24 through to 29 list the instruments that can be located in section 1.3.2 of your learner guide. So I'm not going to go through them with you. As I said, you can find them in your learner guide. You'll also find additional human rights standards and conventions in section 1.3.2 of your learner guide. As a worker, your role is to use these instruments properly to ensure that human rights are upheld in the workplace. Doing this may involve actions and steps such as using technology to accommodate the needs of different clients and promote their independence, providing equal access to materials and equipment so that all clients are given the best possible support, providing the appropriate setting for care and support to ensure that clients are comfortable, listening to clients when they share their needs and working with them to ensure that the organisation provides for these needs. The requirements for providing the proper instruments are based on human rights legislation and guidelines created and provided by the Australian Human Rights Commission. The AHRC functions include address, investigate and conciliate complaints of discrimination, examine and investigate the enactment of the different pieces of anti-discrimination legislation and other Commonwealth and local legislation, inquire on organisational practices, policies or behaviours that breach a person or group's human rights, promote awareness of human rights and research on programs that can aid this endeavour, report on any investigations or findings as necessary. The Australian Human Rights Framework guides the AHRC's and other commissions' actions, provides a more concrete and definite meaning to various human concepts, does not include a Human Rights Act, aims to make information about human rights available through education, established a committee on human rights that reviews existing legislation for human rights compliance. The framework has 5 steps in promoting use of human rights. These are reaffirming the government's commitment to promoting awareness of human rights, educating the community for a better understanding of human rights, engaging with the international community to enhance the protection of human rights locally, protecting human rights by establishing a committee on human rights, and respecting human rights through compliance review of legislations. Human rights approaches. Compliance with human rights requirements means that work practices must be aligned with human rights principles and laws. You must uphold and protect the human rights of your workers, colleagues, and clients. In the workplace, legislation and guidelines translate to obligations you must comply with. Some examples of how you can apply human rights to your workplace approaches are implementing workplace policies and procedures to address barriers in the provision of services to clients, pursue development opportunities on how to provide services based on human rights principles, plan and provide support in consideration of the individual's needs and preferences of clients, get the opinion of clients and work with them to ensure that their needs are addressed, Evaluate how you and other workers interact with clients to ensure that the rights of clients are respected and upheld. Understanding legal and ethical considerations. Organisations and workers looking to offer services to those people can find it daunting to account for the many different variables that may affect their services. The easiest and most effective way to account for these relevant variables is to comply with the legal and ethical requirements and considerations provided by your local authorities, your state territory government, the national Commonwealth, and the international community. Some requirements and considerations that you and other support workers must be familiar with are anti-discrimination requirements and considerations, human rights requirements and considerations, and rights and responsibilities of workers, employers, and clients. Anti-discrimination requirements and considerations. Discrimination means giving unfair treatment to people due to their identity or characteristics, including age, disability, race, religion, sex, and gender. The following federal legislation outlaws discrimination in various areas of life. So the Age Discrimination Act 2004. The Act promotes age diversity by eliminating discrimination against persons on the grounds of age in work, education, and access to goods, services, and facilities. The Disability Discrimination Act of 1992. This Act ensures that persons with disabilities have the same rights to equality before the law as the rest of the community. It eliminates discrimination against persons on the ground of disability. The Racial Discrimination Act 1975. The Act prohibits racial hatred, sometimes called vilification, based on a person's race, colour, national or ethnic origin. Sex Discrimination Act 1984. This Act makes it unlawful to discriminate against a person because of sex, marital status, or pregnancy. Sexual harassment and termination from employment because of family responsibilities are considered unlawful. Your state territory's anti-discrimination legislation. Individual states and territories also have laws against discrimination. The federal and state territories' legislations on discrimination specifies what counts as discrimination and what should be done and avoided or prevented in the workplace. Employment, including applying for work, enjoying benefits provided by the employer, and joining unions. Educations, including admission to educational institutions. Access to any premises open to the public. The federal and state territories' legislations on discrimination specifies what counts as discrimination and what should be done and avoided or prevented in the workplace. Access to goods, services, facilities, and membership in clubs or sports organisations. Accommodations such as accommodations or being evicted from their residence. Land such as disposal of land through a will. Through these pieces of legislation, it becomes unlawful to discriminate against someone on the grounds of age, sex, race, or disability in the following areas: representation in advertisements, services and benefits received from Commonwealth law and programs, and all representatives and administrators of said laws and program. These pieces of legislation set penalties for unlawful discrimination acts, which allow justice to be upheld in cases where verified actions cause discrimination. Various ethical considerations. They prohibit discrimination. They can be found in many sources, such as codes of conduct, codes of practice, and your organisation's policies or procedures. They can also be underwritten rules followed by workers in your industry for common understandings of what is right and wrong. The following are examples of ethical considerations and responsibilities that you may need to comply with. Race discrimination. Individual workers must honour the preferences, traditions, and practices of people from varying racial backgrounds, so long as it does not conflict with any organisational policies. Disability discrimination. Through this responsibility, workers are expected to prioritise the health, safety, and well-being of people with disability that are under their care. They are also required to follow relevant mandatory reporting requirements. Sex discrimination. A worker must treat all workers of both sexes with the same uniform level of respect and courtesy. In the workplace, persons of varying sexes and genders must work harmoniously. Commonwealth and state territory legislation. This includes the Age Discrimination Act, Australian Human Rights Commission Act, Disability Discrimination Act, Racial Discrimination Act, Sex Discrimination Act, and the Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander Act. Organisations, policies and procedures, anti-discrimination policy, inclusion and equity policy. The rights and responsibilities of workers, employers and clients. So the rights are entitlements that belong to every person in a group for which the rights are written. Workers, employers and clients have rights and responsibilities as stated in international treaties and implemented through national laws. The International Labour Organization, otherwise known as ILO, is an international organization under the United Nations that handles labour-related issues and sets guidelines that promote labour standards, including the rights of workers and employers. Standards are developed by the ILO, are submitted to the Australian Parliament for enactment and applications of legislation that will enforce these standards. The core standards set by the ILO in the Declaration of Fundamental Principles and Rights at Work include provisions for freedom of association, collective bargaining, forced compulsory labour, work equality, protection of child workers. The rights to work and rights in work are also part of the person's economic rights, as described in the International Covenant on Economic, Social and Cultural Rights. These rights include the right to work, the right to just and favourable conditions of work, and the right to initiate and participate in trade union activities. Your organisational policies and procedures should contain provisions that dictate and uphold the rights and responsibilities of workers and the employer. The primary laws covering the rights and responsibilities of workers and employers are Fair Work Act 2009 and the Work Health and Safety Act of 2011. Chapter 3 of the Fair Work Act 2009 details the rights and responsibilities of employees and employers. This law includes provisions on general protections, unfair dismissal, industrial action, right of entry, stand down, other rights and responsibilities, and corrupting benefits. The employer's responsibilities under Part 3.1, General Protection of the Fair Work Act 2009, are an employer must not take adverse action against another person because the other person has exercised or proposes to exercise a workplace right. An employer must not take adverse action against another person to prevent the exercise of a workplace right. An employer must not coerce another person to exercise, not exercise, or propose to exercise or not exercise a workplace right in a particular way. An employer must not exert undue influence or pressure on an employee to make decisions or enter agreements concerning work-related matters. An employer must not knowingly or recklessly make a false or misleading representation about the workplace rights of another person. The Workplace Health and Safety Act of 2011. It provides a set of rights and responsibilities shared by employers and workers across various industries. It serves as a national legal framework for ensuring the health and safety of all people in the workplace. Under its Part 2, the employer has the primary duty of care to ensure the health and safety of all workers involved with the organisation. Clients also have responsibilities when accessing and utilising services. The general duties of clients may involve the following: respecting the rights of employees, treating employees without discrimination, abiding by the terms of a written agreement, accepting responsibility for own actions and choices, even though some actions and preferences may involve an element of risk. You may need to remind the clients of their rights and responsibilities. It is always also best to remind your employees to uphold their rights and adhere to their responsibilities. The Act contains many important clauses that provide the rights and responsibilities of employers, workers, and clients. Some of those relevant parties are relevant to the employer. Clauses are: a person conducting a business or undertaking at a workplace may establish a health and safety committee for the workplace or part of the workplace on the person's initiative. The person conducting a business or undertaking must, so far as is reasonably practical, consult in accordance with this division and the regulations with workers who carry out work for the business or undertaking who are more likely to be directly affected by a matter relating to work health or safety. Relevant to the worker, clauses are: a worker may cease or refuse to carry out work if the worker has a reasonable concern that carrying out the work would expose the worker to a serious risk to the worker's health or safety, emanating from immediate or imminent exposure to a hazard. A worker who ceases work under Division 9 of this legislation must, as soon as practical, notify the person conducting the business or undertaking that the worker has ceased work under this division, unless the worker ceased work under direction from a health and safety representative and remain available to carry out suitable alternative work. Relevant to the client, clauses are: clients must be able to review any notices of provisional improvement. A person at a workplace, whether or not the person has a duty under this part, must take reasonable care for his or her health and safety, and take reasonable care that his or her acts or omissions do not adversely affect the health and safety of other persons, and comply, so far as the person is reasonably able, with any reasonable instruction that is given by the person conducting the business or undertaking to allow the person conducting the business or undertaking to comply with this act. In the table below, you can see the general responsibilities of workers and employees. So responsibilities of workers: avoiding work practices that are harmful to the health and safety of yourself or others, know what to do if the employer is not meeting their responsibilities, and knowing and understanding the terms and conditions of employment. Responsibilities of employers: ensuring a safe work environment and providing protective equipment if necessary, ensuring that workers are free from discrimination and bullying, ensuring that workers receive all due entitlements. Here are some of the common ethical rights and responsibilities. So relevant to the worker, the rights and responsibilities: the worker retains the right to maximise his or her potential. The worker has an obligation to treat clients with dignity. This obligation includes safeguarding, promoting, and acknowledging their capacity for self-determination. The action or response for when these are not upheld or met in the workplace: they may be advised to submit a complaint to the Human Resources Department. Violations of this duty are subject to penalties and corrective action in the organisation's policy. So, relevant to the employer, rights and responsibilities: employers enjoy the right to expect all workers to carry out the duties and responsibility of the role as outlined in their terms of employment. Employers are expected to respond to reports where organisational expectations or practices contravene the profession's code of ethics, particularly in clients' rights. Action or response for these: employers reserve the right to perform investigations and conduct disciplinary hearings to address worker performance issues. The investigations and hearings must not distract from the worker's productivity and earning potential. In addition, the worker's rights must be protected throughout the ordeal. There are cases where the employer or person conducting the business does not respond to a reported issue or concern. The employees retain the right to address issues to the best of their ability without the employer's express permission. Relevant to the client, rights and responsibilities: every client is legally protected against discrimination on the basis of age, sex, race, and disability. Their universal human rights are inviolable. It is the responsibility of all clients to respect the rights and legal protections of others. Action or response for when these are not upheld or met in the workplace: so clients reserve the right to submit complaints regarding any negative experiences. Complaints must be submitted through proper channels. The organisation reserves the right to deny service to clients who breach any of the organisation's policies and procedures. The authorities may be involved in cases where clients' actions pose a danger to themselves, other clients, employees, and any person under the organisation's care. Improving yourself and your social awareness. You should now have a good grasp of your awareness and abilities, do your reflections, and have an idea of what you need to improve on, such as your attitudes and beliefs about diverse people, your knowledge of concepts relevant to inclusion, your rights and responsibilities, as well as that of others, your work practices and how these must comply with different legal and ethical requirements, your overall awareness when it comes to working with diverse people. So improving yourself must always be guided by the value of inclusion, since it will affect how you perform in the workplace and how you interact with and form opinions on diverse people in everyday life. When working on improving yourself, follow these 5 basic principles. Have a realistic goal, tap into existing resources, progress is the key, be yourself, and have discipline. Improving your cultural awareness, you need to adjust and allow different cultures to interact and engage differently by using consultation and negotiation to ensure all needs are met. When consulting with persons from different backgrounds, you can follow guidelines such as understanding that you do not fully understand, network with multicultural agencies, broaden your concept of family, make an effort to always give something back, do not make impossible promises or suggest outrageous outcomes. People skills are important. Avoid direct eye contact as a general rule. Upon initial contact, be thoughtful. Address issues that the client may have about government agencies and express genuine inquisitiveness. Learn and use culturally appropriate resources. Be patient and understand silence and respect. Additional strategies to accommodate cultural differences in the workplace may include holding workplace induction programs, complying with existing human rights standards and goals, including creating effective remedies in cases of human rights breaches, prohibiting and eliminating all forms of discrimination in the preservation of rights, prioritising people who came from marginalised and vulnerable groups, involving employees in the decision-making process, using general guidelines and standards for approaching specific tasks and issues, understand the code of practice at all levels of the organisation, educating workers on their rights, why they matter and how they are protected, coordinating with relevant authorities that uphold the safety and well-being of all employees, ensuring that policies and procedures implemented in the workplace are consistent with the state, territory human rights legislation and the National Quality Standard. In this part of the session, we have covered reflecting on your perspectives. In the next session, we'll learn about appreciating diversity, inclusiveness, and their benefits. From here, you need to go to your tutor's online learning portal and complete the assessment activities. Thank you for your time today, and I hope you found the session informative.